In my book, Desert of Solitude, I basically wrote about the lessons learned um, from being on my own for so many years, and the peace I've come to be in with my solitude. And it's interesting because it's a repeating lesson about not just aloneness, but the growth opportunities that are available to you when you aren't leaning on old crutches or traditions or familial expectations and all these things. And I recently ran into someone I've known since 1999. We were work friends back in Milwaukee, and it was odd because I knew she lived in Phoenix, and I was like, okay, well, maybe one day when I'm in Phoenix, I'll run into her. But I ran into her at the Tucson post office in South Tucson, and we were both. She was coming out, I was coming in. I was just like, how, what, this whole thing. And she was like, oh, good to see you, blah, 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 see you later. No time to talk, gotta go. I'm like, okay. And she's like, oh, call me. I'm like, I've done that. You haven't returned my calls. Well, call me again. And I thought about it, but I really wasn't motivated to. And then I got sick, and it was like, whatever. But she called last night, and we had an interesting conversation, but a conversation that really wasn't unlike any conversation we had prior to falling out of touch about 8 years ago. A lot of her was still in the same situation she was in those many years ago. And it was, based on probably frustration with family, frustration with expectations from family, and her ability to deliver, her interest in delivering, her, desire to deliver on those expectations. And it was interesting to me because I'm sitting here thinking like, wow, I just literally moved across the country to continue to sort of shed any type of box that people are determined to put me in. And that box was mostly corporate America. And I was just done with the corporate side, right? And there was another friend who was actually, we made something of, we were three of a four friend group. Who I have not been out of touch with in all this time. And she also is suffering a great deal from expectations, but she's the ringleader. She's the one who puts all these things on herself, and she has this expectation that everyone will fall in line. And people are basically living their own lives, and people aren't necessarily interested in falling in line with her plans and her needs and her whatever, right? But she has literally never left the space, that I basically first met her in. I mean, not the same job, but almost basically the same home, and also pretty much stunted in her growth due to the limitations she puts on herself more so than people put on her. And so I've been thinking about these two because I met them both when I was 19 or 20, I think, and they're both a few years older than me. So I thought they were all wisdom of womanhood and all this other stuff. And it's amazing to me that we can choose to live as uniquely ourselves, or we can choose to live as representatives of who people want us to be. And representatives because we're never truly what anyone else wants us to be. We're only going to try to play at being that person. And it sort of saddens me to think of 20 years of knowing these women, and neither of them are anywhere near where they want to be in their lives because they have dedicated their lives to the image of others for themselves. That's just amazing to me. And it's amazing to me because I left home, Milwaukee, when I was 30, with the express desire to break from my family's expectation of me. I felt as if I was on this road to being basically everybody's surrogate daughter. My mother had already passed away, and people were just pulling on me to basically do their will. And and I remember writing my grandma and my aunt a letter once I arrived in New York at the age of 30, and I said, essentially, I want to know who I am. I want to know what LaShonda likes. I want to know what LaShonda wants. I want to know who LaShonda is. And I want to know these things outside of the context of my family and my friends and people who have known me all my life. And they were greatly offended. How dare I? So greatly offended at my desire to know myself apart from them. And honestly, it created a rupture in my relationship with both of them that pretty much lasts to this day. My grandmother died a number of years ago, and we hadn't really repaired that breach. My aunt is still living, but we still can't have a truly honest conversation because I get guilted into being a human being, or guilted because I'm a human being with my own feelings and thoughts and all that good stuff. And so it's interesting to me that my desire to be me was offensive to my family. Think about that. That's profoundly amazing. And it remains offensive to my family. And I am at a point where I simply don't care. I simply don't care if they are offended by my desire to be who I am. You know, I'm not going to change. I'm going to be who I am, regardless of anyone's pressure for me to be otherwise. And so it's interesting for me to be in friendships or pseudo friendships or whatever and I say pseudo because you can't really be friends with people who don't really know who they are and they aren't showing up for themselves. So if they aren't showing up for themselves, they certainly aren't showing up for you, and they aren't showing up with you as themselves, if that makes sense, right? So you're basically in a friendship with a representative or with a person who doesn't necessarily know who they are and doesn't practice being who they are because they're only trying to exist as someone else, right? And so there's no truth in that interaction. There's no truth or honesty or authenticity in any of those interactions. And that's why I've realized with most of my relationships over the years, and that's why it's so easy for me to just step away, because I'm not stepping away from anything real. I'm stepping away from images, from projections, from lies, basically. So yeah, this is what it's like to be in close conversation with me. It's like, they're like, okay, later, Shonda, we don't have time for all this. But yeah, so I don't know if I had a cohesive message on this one, but I know that I am very grateful this morning. Oh, the sun is finally coming up. I am very grateful this morning for my solitude. I am extremely honored that God has weaned me from the influences and the natures of other people to shake me loose of all the things that would have moored me closer to this world or more fully to this world, and poured more of himself into me with each cleansing and each burning and each trial. So I just want to say that, give yourself the opportunity to be you. Give yourself the opportunity to grow. Give yourself the opportunity to end the space. Sometimes it's space. For me, it was moving from Milwaukee to New York City, and I was there for 14 years. I didn't think it was going to be 14 years. I actually told my aunt and my grandma that I would be out of contact for 6 months, and I practically kept my distance for about 3 years because I was going through this developmental stage. A very spiritual growth stage, actually. That's when I pretty much came to Jesus when I first got to New York, but which is, not something you would expect. But New York was certainly my true desert, and it was my communion space, and my incubator, I believe, spiritually. So I deeply believe that we have to give ourselves the space and the opportunity to become what we are going to become. We can become it on this side of life, or we can, have to come back and figure this stuff all over again from the jump, right? But I'm determined that the next time I'm in any space near here, I'm going to be on a come up. I'm not starting over. I am not interested in starting over from where I began. Everything that I've learned thus far, I plan on taking with me. So, to God be the glory. Be blessed as you go. Know that you were created in His image, and He knows who you are, and He wants you to know who you are as well. And if you're not actively practicing being you, you are actively dishonoring your Creator. And that's my word. Be blessed.